Namaste. Welcome to the next talk in this series of talks from Heart to Heart, Volume 2. These are the talks and questions and answers from the proceedings of the seminars of Sahaj Marg held during September-October 1987 at France, Madagascar, Switzerland by Pujya Shri Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari. This is Volume 2. This 13th talk is titled The Way of Progress. Our mental turmoil and our feeling of anguish are because of the feeling that we are in this body in which we are now. We create the separateness. Now, what can we do about that? The thing which most upset me in the beginning of my life with Master was that there were always Abhyasis dying or sick, something like that, and it never visibly seemed to bother him. I used to think he was a heartless person. People would come weeping even from his own locality, from his own village, and saying so and so died only 2 hours ago. He would only put on a long face and say, "It is very sad." Nothing more than that. Now, I used to think that on one side he has a heart that loves everything in the universe, but you never see a tear in the eyes of that old man. What is this contradiction? Then I learned the secret of it in meditation, you see. For him there is no death. We die, but for him there is no death. For whom is he to weep? It would be crazy to weep for somebody who is not dead. So that is the mystery, you see. We have to learn slowly, little by little, and then when our turn comes, we become like that and people accuse us of being heartless. So we have to wait until they learn the lesson, you see. A funny thing happened, My father died recently. Now all my life I have been afraid of the time when he will die, because my mother died when I was 5 years old or 5.5 years old, and he was our support. All our life he brought us up, he trained us, he educated us, and for me it was a frightening thing to think of a time where I would have to live without him. Now on the day he was going to die, I had a dream in the morning. I received a letter from him. On the front is my address, naturally. Now I have a habit of turning the envelope round to see who is it from, though generally I know from the handwriting. When I turned it round, I found my father had written, "I may never see you again." This was at 4 o'clock in the morning, and at 12 o'clock he passed away in Bangalore. I was in Madras, and we of course had to go immediately to Bangalore. We all went there. Now I have always been afraid of dead bodies or staying in a place where there is a dead body. It was some old primeval fear. But when I went there and the body was there laid out, I didn't even feel that it was my father or that he was dead. Nothing. We reached Bangalore at 6 in the morning. Now normally I would not be able to sleep in that house, but I went to the bed at 9 and slept until 6 in the morning. It is most unusual. Normally I don't sleep so much, and next morning the body was there. People were coming for condolence, and I was sitting in the chair like this, perfectly happy. Now the question is, where was that fear of death which I had been nursing for 60 years? It disappeared, and for me it was a great revelation, you see, because it meant the Master is still working. So there are things which we learn by experience, not by being taught. In fact, some people may have thought, this son, he is sitting there like a philosopher. Should there not be some emotion when the father dies? But really, it should not be there, because where has he gone? He is still very much somewhere, isn't it? Now suppose your son decides to migrate to Australia. He leaves you and maybe you don't see him for 50 years again. But we are not sorry about it. In death, what is the separation? It is the same thing. So we make this artificial difference. This one is dead. This one is not dead. So we make this artificial difference. So that again it is a question of our human consciousness making us suffer or enjoy. I have even known people asking Babuji whether they could avoid liberation, because they feel even like in the relationship between a husband and wife, there must be two persons to enjoy married life. If I am merged with the infinite, what will I enjoy there? People are so stupid, you see. It is like my two fingers saying, crossing two fingers, I cannot do this unless we are two fingers. They forget they are part of my hand. This is part of my body, which is me. So we are like fingers of infinity coming out and pretending to be two, loving, hating, quarreling, and having a lot of fun in the process, all illusion. So the spiritual way is to liberate the consciousness from the trap of this identity into which it has fallen and merge it with the universal identity. And what happens? We have to wait and see. You know, it is funny thing, especially in religious texts, especially in the not so developed religions where gods and goddesses fall in love, gods commit incest for instance, and one god takes away the wife of another god with impunity. Especially, you know, the Greek pantheon. This is the human imagination running riot and a peculiar form of invertendo, that instead of bringing down the divine qualities into ourselves, we transfer our corruption, our vice, all these sins to the gods themselves. And you know why they did it? To justify that they were doing here. Zeus is doing it, Jupiter is doing it, Pluto is doing it, Neptune is doing it. Why not me? You see, the capacity of human mind transferring its crimes to the divine realm and then supporting its own criminality by referring to that as authority for its own sins. The human mind is extraordinarily creative, but unfortunately, even from those times, in a self-destructive way. See, if the Greeks, the Romans had done their work properly, we would not be here because everything would have been liberated then. And we are suffering the consequences of that Greek drama even today. Even today, you find the people blaming religion, blaming the church, blaming the fathers. What a wonderful heritage the Greeks have left us, and we are proud of it. Even today, I see envelopes with a brand name Heracles. You see, this shows what a vicious hold these thoughts have upon us. What is it that makes that hold possible? Our desires. Without desire, we would not need their help. So, these gods are very convenient props for our immoral behavior, our corrupt practices, and it is not surprising that in many societies in the world, people are going back to these worships, forgetting the God of Christ, forgetting the God of the Hindu pantheon, you know, the ultimate. They now want to go back to those primitive cults. They make life much more enjoyable and permit enjoyment. So you see, a sign of man's evolution is when his God evolves with him, and a sign of man's degradation is when he pulls down the God to his level, and we see this happening today. I would express this another way. Suppose I took the TGV from Marseille to Paris. I find all the buses are smiling. I feel happy about it, you see. Similarly, for the departing soul, it is a pleasant thing, not for the soul that is here. Now the question arises, does this departing soul have the consciousness to appreciate what is happening? Normally not, because it is only a highly elevated soul which takes its awareness with it when leaving this body. Normally, they fall into some state of unconsciousness, inconscient state. We call it, because unconsciousness is not the right word. Unconsciousness is the opposite of consciousness. Here, the soul sleeps into the state where there is neither consciousness or unconsciousness. Consciousness itself vanishes. So the answer is no. Another thing Babuji always said, nothing we do can help another soul except prayer. Or you must become a saint of such a caliber where you start radiating what you have, you see, like Babuji could do. Then the whole world, the whole universe benefits. What is the difference? You have Jupiter, a giant planet, but it doesn't give anything. The sun gives you light, heat, warmth, makes climate possible, makes vegetation possible. So there must be a fire, you see. What I said about love. That is why the lack of the love condition is called ice, and a person who cannot love is said to have a cold heart. Because love is always associated with warmth, with fire, ultimately with self combustion. Your love must not consume somebody else, it must consume you. The example of the candle, which I have used so many times, in its effort to illuminate you, it consumes itself. So at that stage, you can help anybody. At all other levels, we have to pray. My meditation cannot help anybody else. I mean, as a normal human being, but it sets an example for others to follow. So in that indirect fashion, we help so many people. That is also how so many abhyasis come through other abhyasis. That is why I think 2 or 3 days back, when talking about the ability to help others, I mentioned this ability to serve at various levels. That is self-evident, you see. You know, there is a funny thing. In most societies, we are happy when a child is born and we weep when somebody dies. But there is one society where the opposite is done. They weep when a child is born and celebrate when a man dies. That is a sensible attitude. O soul which was free in bliss and which had liberty is suddenly imprisoned in a stupid human body here. It is not a matter for grief. Is it not a matter for grief? So they weep, and death is a liberation from this prison. They celebrate it. I think it's a healthy attitude. Don't you think so? It doesn't matter which society or where, but the fact is there. You see, if I say somebody made $1 million by doing this business, you don't ask who. You say, how can I do it quickly? Tell me. Here also we should do the same thing. Actually, most of our grief and most of our enjoyment is conventional. The heart rarely participates. I think there must have been a time in the human evolution when without the cooperation of the heart, the tear glands would not work. But now we have mastered the art of shedding tears without the heart participating. I sincerely believe, that to feel grief when somebody dies, you must have been extraordinarily related to that person. Every one of us here has attended birthday parties and also funerals. We are so comfortable with a birthday party, but few people feel easy or at ease when going for a funeral or for a condolence. They are thinking of what to say, how to say it. Is it right to smile? Should I shake hands or not? Why all these inhibitions? Because we are going to play a part and we want to make sure we play it well. I mean, it's total hypocrisy. All this business of condolence and funerals. In birthdays, parties, there is no part to play, you see. Happiness is so easy to emulate. That is why there is this old saying in English, laugh and the world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. It is not easy to feel grief. We must go beyond it. We must develop spiritually and then see the changes in ourselves. There is an inaudible question to answer to that. First of all, it is not logical to think that development should take time. It depends on one's efforts. Lalaji achieved perfection in 7 months, so that argument doesn't stand. The second, what will happen when I die, is even more destructive. If the master can help me in life, he can help me after I am dead. So it makes no difference whether I am here or not. If I have been connected with him during life, His help should be available to me after my so-called death too. And if I have faith in that, I would rather die sooner than later, for at least two very important reasons. The first reason is very important, that every moment I live, I am subjected to pressures, temptations, possible falls. Why should I take that risk, isn't it? The second is the suffering concomitant on life. What is the fun in suffering if I can leave this body and still receive his help? So, especially for an Abhyasi, it is very stupid to want to live a long life. In fact, there is that other English saying, those whom the gods love die young. There are only two classes of old people, the large multitude which have to suffer the bhoga of their sanskaras, which needs time, and for them, therefore, old age is a curse. Therefore, the human being, with all his or her stupidity, knows old age to be a curse, and the other class, in which there may be one or two persons in several thousands of years, are the saints who have to live to serve. They have no bhoga, nothing, you see. The saint exists for our service. So, whichever way you look at it, it is foolish. Let us, of course, not pray that people should die young, but we should not oppose it when it happens. I have heard so many people say, oh, I wish he had lived a few years more. Now look at this funny sentiment. Why a few years more? Why not many years more? So we want him to or her to live for our sake, not for his or her sake. And at least in India, whenever somebody dies, we can hear this very often, you see. What will I do now? This is always the cry of the person left behind, not a concern for the dead. What is that departed soul doing? Is it wandering in darkness? Does it have the Master's guidance? Can it see the light? We are not concerned with all that, you see. We are only concerned with ourselves. What will I do now? And only yesterday, I was talking about a well-known short story where a man's wife dies in the morning. He is miserable and at night winds up in a brothel. Justification being that he is utterly lonely without his wife. He had no time to think of his wife's loneliness, thrown into the void, in the dark, no company, where nobody can speak to her, nobody can touch her. What is she doing? He never thought of it. Many people praise that novel for its supposed psychological insight into human behavior. For me, it is a shameful exposition of human selfishness. So, this is the problem of life and death. Master always used to say, not in public, but when we were in his room inside near the kitchen. I asked him once, why do I need a master? All the conventional answers he gave me. Then I asked him a question, which he admired very much. I said, will your help be available to me when either I am no longer here or you are no longer here? He was so immensely happy. He said, you are the first person in my experience who had asked me this question. Now I am amazed. Surely we should be concerned with what is going to happen to us when we die. Master said, that is the tragedy. Even in spiritual life, they think only this life and of the Master in this life. Who is there who can think of the life after this or what they are going to do there? And the second most shameful thing, I realized myself later that we limit the Master's ability only to help us in this life, not beyond. So what sort of faith have we in him? Some of these things are so disturbing. That is why I get so annoyed when people talk to me of faith and love and all this nonsense. Babuji used to put this in one small sentence. People should speak only after they have experienced a condition. Otherwise it is all theoretical, speculative and not real. There is one frequent question asked by Abhyasis. Do liberated souls work on this earth? Yes, if they are given work, not otherwise. Why on this earth? They can work anywhere in the universe. It depends on the order given. What do they do when they are not working? What do you do when you don't work? They do the same thing, I suppose. They work under orders of whoever is authorized to give them an order. When they say, the army will march on receiving orders, orders from whom? Well, the army knows, and the person who has to give the orders knows. We are not concerned with it. I am accused of not saying all I know. I have to tell you what you have to hear. It is like a dictionary. You look up the word which you want. Can you read a dictionary like a novel? You can't. Good example. Babuji used to say, everything is revealed according to need. This is not the idle Western intellectualism where knowledge is sold on the streets. The Eastern tradition, you have to work for knowledge and deserve it in such a way that you can be trusted with that knowledge. Not so easy, is it? Now, there was some talk of new abhyasis. When I went to my master in March 1964, I never felt I was new or old or anything. When a child is born, you are many women here. When you have a baby, does the baby feel it is new in its mother's hands? And does it feel that it has to get used to the mother? Or does the mother feel, this is a new baby, I must get accustomed to the baby? I never felt like that, I felt as if I was going home to my master. And therefore, I could just go and sit with him, talk with him, no difference, right from the beginning. Other people usually take a few years to come nearer and nearer and nearer to the master. It is like lovers, who say, you be at the north end of the lane, I'll be at the south end of the lane. Tomorrow we will each advance 1 meter, next week each another meter, and ultimately on Christmas Day we will come close enough where we can kiss. Crazy lovers. You all know more about love than I do. When you fall in love, what do? You grab hold first. You don't think, oh, he is a new man. What shall I do? Let me get acquainted with him. Same thing with the master, because essentially the relationship between a master and a disciple is a love affair at the highest level. So there should be no shyness holding back, all this nonsense. So you don't mind if I say what the conclusion is, that where there is hesitation and all this reserve about coming to the master, there is no love. So please, you know what I want to say. The Eastern humility forbids my saying it out explicitly, you see. There are other ways of saying it. As I told you in the beginning, love has no language, but it's a funny thing. For human being, normally it takes 50 or 60 years to realize this, because in our young age, when we fall in love, we need so much of language and movement. Now, what happens if two people continue to exist in love? At the end of their life, they find there is no need for words, no need for holding hands, no need for anything. But this is a knowledge nowadays very rare, because few people remain in love for so long. Today, we have a changing society. We have to change our cars every year, our lovers every year, our shoes every 3 months. I think the only thing we are allowed to mature in the wine and whiskey in the vats, which is not really very useful to us. It would be better if we threw that away and allowed our love to mature. I have been told that if you taste whiskey which has just been put in a vat, it is very bitter and taste of raw spirit. That is what happens when we try to taste new love. It also burns like spirit and doesn't have much of a taste. So we have to be patient. Let love rest. Let it mature and then take it at the age of 50, 60, 70, Love must mature, like fruit must ripen, like wine must mature. But nowadays we have no time, we have no patience. So, what shall we do about it? We have to lead a loveless life and replace it with lust, a very, very poor substitute. You agree? I think we should sit without speech, ideally speaking. My master Babuji, he would talk for a few hours and then say, it is all useless talk. To talk has become more easy because now we don't have to speak of interesting things, we speak of useful things. It is like a man who goes shopping and says, let me buy something interesting. We don't know what to buy. When you know you need a needle or a piece of thread, or a shoelace or a comb, it is easy to go and buy it. Same thing in life. When we want to do interesting things, we don't know what to do. But if you train your mind to do useful things, there is no problem at all. So now, let us try to orient our minds towards useful activity, useful talk, useful things, and away from interesting things. That is the way of progress. Thank you for listening. In the next narration, we will start our next talk, the 14th talk titled Surrender. Thank you once again.